People often smile when I say this. Some laugh, some get curious. They ask, why salt? Why in your wallet? Salt is one of the simplest things a human being can possess. It sits quietly on our tables, hides in our kitchens, costs almost nothing, and is rarely given a second thought. Yet the moment it is missing, everything changes. Food that looks perfect becomes tasteless. A meal prepared with effort feels incomplete. This simple reality carries a profound lesson about life, value, and awareness. Keeping a pinch of salt in my wall, it is a daily reminder that the smallest things often hold the greatest power, and that true value is not always loud, expensive, or visible. In today's world, people are trained to admire what is big, shiny, and costly. We measure success by numbers, followers, bank balances, titles, and possessions. We are taught to believe that only what is rare and expensive deserves respect, but salt challenges this mindset. Salt is everywhere. Anyone can afford it. It does not impress, and yet, without it, even the most luxurious feast feels empty. This teaches a truth we often forget. Value is not defined by price, and importance is not determined by attention. When I open my wallet and see that pinch of salt, it reminds me that life is shaped more by small, consistent elements than by dramatic moments. A kind word spoken daily matters more than one grand speech. Honest work done quietly matters more than a single lucky break. Discipline practiced in small habits matters more than sudden motivation. Just as salt works grain by grain, the quality of a person's life is built moment by moment, choice by choice, habit by habit. Salt also teaches awareness. It does not dominate a dish, it blends into it. You don't eat salt on its own, yet it affects every bite. In the same way, small values quietly influence every area of life. Integrity affects every decision. Gratitude affects every emotion. Patience affects every relationship. These qualities are rarely celebrated, but they define whether life feels meaningful or hollow. The salt in my wallet reminds me to pay attention to these quiet forces, because they are shaping my life even when I am not noticing. There is also a lesson here about pride. People often ignore what is common and chase what is rare, even when what is common is essential. We do the same with people. We overlook those who are always there for us, those who support us quietly, those who add stability rather than excitement. Salt reminds me not to disrespect what is always present. Familiar does not mean insignificant. Consistent does not mean replaceable. The most reliable things in life often go unnoticed until they are gone. Another powerful meaning lies in how salt must be used correctly. Too little ruins the food, but too much destroys it as well. This teaches balance. Small things matter, but they must be respected and handled with wisdom. A small habit can build you or break you. A small lie can slowly destroy trust. A small act of kindness can heal a wounded heart. Salt reminds me that nothing is truly small once it is repeated, and nothing is harmless if it is misused. Keeping salt next to money also creates a contrast that is impossible to ignore. Money is loud. It promises power, comfort, and security. Salt is quiet. It promises nothing, yet delivers everything it represents. This contrast reminds me that wealth without wisdom is empty. You can have a wallet full of money and a life full of stress, fear, and dissatisfaction. Or you can have modest means and still experience richness through contentment, gratitude, and purpose. Salt reminds me which kind of richness truly lasts. There is another layer to this reminder. Salt comes from the earth. It is natural, grounded, unchanged for centuries. Human desires, however, are endless and constantly shifting. What we want today will not satisfy us tomorrow. Salt reminds me to stay grounded, to remember where I come from, and to remain connected to simple truths even as life becomes more complex. It pulls my attention away from illusion and back toward what sustains life at its core. This small pinch also challenges impatience. People want quick results, sudden success, instant recognition. But salt works slowly. It takes time to blend. It does not transform a dish in 1 second. It enhances it gradually. Life works the same way. Growth is slow. Character is built over time. Wisdom comes through experience. Salt teaches me to respect the process and not despise small beginnings. In moments of frustration, when life feels heavy or progress feels invisible, the salt reminds me that impact does not need to be dramatic to be real. You do not need to change the whole world to matter. Improving one corner of it is enough. Adding value quietly is enough. Being consistent is enough. Salt never tries to be sugar or spice. It fulfills its role perfectly. That is another lesson. You don't need to imitate others to be valuable. You only need to fulfill your purpose sincerely. Ultimately, the pinch of salt in my wallet is not about superstition or tradition. It is about consciousness. It is a physical reminder of an invisible truth. Never underestimate the power of small things. Life is not ruined by one great failure, but by ignoring small warnings. Life is not built by one great victory, but by honoring small responsibilities. When you learn to respect the little things, you learn to protect the big ones. In conclusion, the salt in my wallet teaches me that greatness hides in simplicity, strength lives in consistency, and value often whispers instead of shouting. It reminds me that a meaningful life is not created by chasing what looks impressive, but by honoring what quietly sustains us every day. And once you truly understand the power of small things, you stop searching for magic elsewhere, because you realize it has been in your hands all along. From the earliest days of human civilization, salt has been more than a seasoning. Long before modern technology, refrigeration, and preservatives, salt was survival. It protected food from rotting, preserved nourishment for long journeys, and made it possible for families and communities to endure through harsh seasons. This ancient role gives salt a powerful symbolic meaning: preservation. When I keep a pinch of salt in my wallet, it reminds me that just as food needs protection from decay, a human life also needs forces that preserve it from moral, spiritual, and emotional corruption. Decay rarely announces itself. Food does not suddenly rot in a single moment. It spoils slowly, quietly, often unnoticed until it is too late. Human character follows the same pattern. People do not lose their values overnight. It happens gradually, through small compromises, ignored warnings, and repeated justifications. Salt stands as a silent guard against this process. It represents the values that stop decay before it begins: honesty, self-control, faith, accountability, and humility. Keeping salt close to my money is a reminder that wealth, without these preservatives, can easily become a source of corruption rather than benefit. Money is powerful. It amplifies what already exists inside a person. In the hands of someone with strong values, money becomes a tool for good, stability, generosity, and responsibility. In the hands of someone without inner preservation, it accelerates decay, feeding arrogance, greed, dishonesty, and carelessness. The salt in my wallet reminds me that protection must come before possession. It is not enough to earn. One must preserve the self while earning. Otherwise, what appears as success on the outside may hide collapse on the inside. Salt also teaches vigilance. In the past, people understood that without salt, their food would not last. They planned for it. They stored it carefully. They respected its role. Today, many people plan for income, investments, and comfort, but fail to plan for character. They assume values will somehow survive on their own, but values, like food, need intentional preservation. They require daily attention, reinforcement, and sometimes sacrifice. Salt reminds me that protection is not accidental, it is deliberate. Another powerful lesson of salt as preservation is restraint. Salt works by drawing out moisture, limiting the environment where bacteria can grow. In life, restraint serves a similar function. Self-control limits the space where harmful habits develop. Discipline restricts behaviors that might feel good in the moment but destroy stability in the long run. The salt in my wallet reminds me that saying no is often more protective than saying yes. Not every opportunity is a blessing, and not every desire deserves fulfillment. There is also a lesson in consistency. Salt preserves only when it is present continuously. A single use does not protect food forever. In the same way, values must be lived consistently. You cannot be honest only when it is convenient and expect trust to survive. You cannot practice discipline occasionally and expect long-term strength. Salt teaches that preservation is not a one-time act but a continuous commitment. Each day, each decision adds another grain of protection. Salt's role in preservation also connects deeply to responsibility. When someone preserves food, they are thinking about the future, about tomorrow, next week, the next generation. Keeping salt in my wallet, it reminds me to think beyond immediate gratification. Every choice I make today is shaping the condition of my future. Am I preserving peace or planting stress? Am I protecting trust or eroding it? Am I guarding my integrity or slowly trading it away for comfort? Salt turns every present decision into a future-focused question. Another aspect of preservation is protection from waste. Spoiled food is wasted food. Spoiled character leads to wasted potential. Many talented people fail not because they lack ability, but because they lack preservation. Their gifts rot under pressure, temptation, or arrogance. Salt reminds me that talent needs protection just as much as food does. Skill without character eventually destroys itself. Preservation is what allows potential to mature instead of spoil. The salt also reminds me that preservation is often invisible. When food is preserved properly, no one praises the salt. They simply enjoy the meal. In life, when values protect a person, the success looks natural and effortless. People say, "He was lucky," or "things just worked out for her." They rarely see the quiet discipline, the guarded decisions, the boundaries that prevented disaster. Salt teaches me not to seek recognition for doing what is right. Preservation is successful precisely because it is unnoticed. There is a spiritual layer as well. Many traditions view salt as a symbol of covenant, permanence, and loyalty. Unlike many substances, salt does not spoil. It remains stable. This stability reminds me that some principles should not change with circumstances. Truth should remain truth whether it is profitable or costly. Integrity should remain intact whether someone is watching or not. Salt in my wallet, it reminds me to be consistent across situations, to remain preserved even when tested. In moments of temptation, when shortcuts appear attractive, the salt becomes a silent warning. Shortcuts may save time, but they often damage preservation. Cutting corners may bring quick gain, but it weakens the structure that holds life together. Salt reminds me that what is preserved lasts longer than what is rushed. Slow, protected progress is better than fast, fragile success. In conclusion, the pinch of salt in my wallet represents protection against decay, of values, character, purpose, and peace. It reminds me that life, like food, needs preservation to remain nourishing. Without values, success spoils. Without discipline, freedom decays. Without integrity, wealth loses its meaning. Salt teaches that preservation is quiet, intentional, and constant. And when you learn to protect what truly matters, you don't just survive, you endure, with your character intact and your future secure. Salt has a unique quality that few things in life possess. It transforms without demanding attention. You never praise a dish by saying, "What wonderful salt this is." Instead, you say, "This food tastes amazing." Salt disappears into the meal, yet its absence is immediately noticed. This quiet influence is the heart of the lesson it teaches about humility and impact. When I keep a pinch of salt in my wallet, It reminds me that true influence does not need noise, ego, or recognition. The most powerful changes in life often happen silently. Modern culture celebrates visibility. People are taught to announce their achievements, display their success, and demand acknowledgement. Being loud is mistaken for being important. But salt stands in direct opposition to this mindset. It never tries to dominate. It does not compete with other flavors. It exists to serve, to enhance, to support. This teaches me that life is not about standing above others, but about adding value to what already exists. Humility is not weakness, it is refinement. Salt also teaches the difference between presence and ego. Ego wants to be seen. Presence simply wants to be useful. A humble person, like salt, improves the environment without making it about themselves. In relationships, humility creates safety. In leadership, it builds trust. In work, it earns respect that lasts longer than applause. The salt in my wallet reminds me to ask a simple question in every situation. Am I trying to shine, or am I trying to serve? There is a deep strength in humility that is often misunderstood. People assume that being humble means thinking less of yourself. In reality, it means thinking of yourself less. Salt does not question its worth, nor does it exaggerate it. It knows its role and fulfills it completely. This balance is powerful. When you know who you are and why you exist, you don't need to compete, compare, or prove. Salt teaches self-awareness without arrogance. Another lesson lies in how salt works in combination with other ingredients. On its own, it is unpleasant, but when blended properly, it brings harmony. Life works the same way. No one thrives in isolation. Humility allows cooperation. It allows listening. It allows learning. A person who believes they already know everything cannot grow. Salt reminds me to remain teachable, to accept correction, and to value the contributions of others. Humility is what allows collective strength to exceed individual ability. Salt also dissolves. It gives up its form to fulfill its purpose. This is a profound lesson in sacrifice. Meaningful impact often requires letting go of pride, comfort, and sometimes credit. Parents dissolve their comfort for their children. Teachers dissolve their time for their students. Leaders dissolve personal gain for collective good. Salt teaches that losing yourself in service is not loss, it is fulfillment. Purpose is found not in preservation of ego, but in contribution. There is also wisdom in how salt spreads evenly. One area oversalted ruins the whole dish. Humility teaches balance in influence. It is not about overwhelming others with advice, opinions, or control. It is about being measured, thoughtful, and considerate. Quiet consistency shapes environments more effectively than force. Salt reminds me that influence should be gentle but steady. The wallet is a place associated with status and worth. Placing salt there creates a powerful contrast. It reminds me that no matter how much money I carry, humility must remain present. Wealth has a way of inflating ego, creating distance, and feeding entitlement. Salt humbles money. It reminds me that resources are a responsibility, not a badge of superiority. Humility protects wealth from turning into arrogance, and success from turning into isolation. Another powerful lesson is that salt works even when unnoticed. People rarely thank salt, yet they benefit from it. In life, the most meaningful contributions are often unacknowledged. The person who keeps peace in the family, the worker who prevents mistakes, the friend who listens quietly, these roles rarely receive applause. Salt teaches me to be at peace with invisibility. Impact does not require recognition to be real. Humility also creates resilience. When your sense of worth depends on praise, criticism becomes devastating. But when your purpose is service, criticism becomes feedback. Salt does not react to opinions. It fulfills its role regardless. This reminds me to stay grounded, to accept feedback without defensiveness, and to continue doing what is right even when it goes unnoticed or misunderstood. There is also a moral dimension to this lesson. Arrogance often precedes downfall. History, relationships, and personal stories all confirm this. Salt protects against this by keeping one grounded. It reminds me that no matter how high I rise, I remain human, dependent on others, on discipline, and on grace. Humility is not about denying success. It is about remembering its source and its responsibility. In moments of achievement, salt whispers restraint. In moments of failure, it offers stability. Humility keeps success from becoming toxic and failure from becoming crushing. It creates emotional balance. Salt does not change its nature based on circumstances. It remains consistent. This consistency is a powerful form of inner strength. In conclusion, the pinch of salt in my wall, it is a constant reminder that true influence is quiet, true strength is humble, and true greatness serves without shouting. It teaches me that life is not about being noticed, but about being useful, not about standing above others, but about lifting what is around you. When you learn to live like salt, humble, balanced, and quietly impactful, you don't just improve your own life, you enhance the lives of everyone you touch, even if they never know your name. Salt has a way of revealing human nature. We rarely notice it when it is present, yet the moment it is missing, dissatisfaction appears. Food that once seemed ordinary suddenly feels incomplete. This simple experience mirrors how people treat blessings in their own lives. Health, peace, family, daily sustenance, safety, and even the ability to wake up each morning are often ignored until they are taken away. Keeping a pinch of salt in my wall, it reminds me to stay awake to what I already have, instead of becoming blind through familiarity. Gratitude is not a reaction, it is a discipline. Most people assume they will feel thankful automatically when life is good. But gratitude does not come naturally to the human ego. The ego focuses on what is missing, not on what is present. It compares, measures, and complains. Salt challenges this tendency. It quietly asks a question every time I open my wallet. Are you appreciating what sustains you, or are you only chasing what impresses you? This question alone has the power to shift perspective. One of the greatest causes of unhappiness is not lack, but ingratitude. Many people have more than previous generations could ever imagine, yet feel poorer inside. They eat better food, live in safer homes, and have more opportunities, yet complain more. This happens because blessings that are not acknowledged lose their emotional impact. Salt reminds me that enjoyment comes not from increasing possessions, but from increasing awareness. A simple meal eaten with gratitude can feel richer than an expensive feast eaten with dissatisfaction. There is also a moral weight to gratitude. When you appreciate something, you treat it with care. When you take it for granted, you waste it. Food wasted, time wasted, relationships neglected, opportunities ignored. All are symptoms of ingratitude. Salt, which was historically precious and carefully stored, reminds me not to waste what sustains me. Every resource, whether material or emotional, deserves respect. Salt also exposes how conditional our gratitude often is. People say thank you when life gives them something extra, but remain silent about what they already rely on every day. Breathing, seeing, walking, earning, being protected from countless unseen dangers. These are treated as entitlements rather than gifts. Salt reminds me that nothing is guaranteed. Just as food can lose its flavor without warning, life can change in a moment. Gratitude prepares the heart to handle both abundance and loss with balance. Another lesson lies in how salt enhances enjoyment. Gratitude does the same for life. It does not change circumstances, but it changes experience. Two people can live the same life. One feels deprived, the other feels blessed. The difference is not in possessions, but in perception. Salt reminds me that appreciation multiplies joy, while complaint multiplies dissatisfaction. Gratitude is not denial of difficulty, it is recognition of support within difficulty. Keeping salt in my wall, it also reminds me to thank people, not just life. We often benefit from others' efforts without acknowledgement. Farmers, workers, parents, teachers, and countless unseen contributors make daily life possible. Salt represents their quiet labor. Gratitude humanizes us. It softens hearts, strengthens relationships, and builds trust. A thankful person is easier to live with, easier to help, and easier to forgive. There is also a protective power in gratitude. When a person is grateful, envy loses its grip, comparison weakens, resentment fades. Gratitude anchors the mind in sufficiency instead of scarcity. Salt protects food from decay. Gratitude protects the soul from bitterness. The salt in my wallet reminds me that many inner struggles begin not with hardship, but with forgetting how much is already enough. Gratitude also brings humility. When you recognize blessings, you recognize that you did not create everything by yourself. You acknowledge help, timing, mercy, and chance. This awareness keeps arrogance in check. It prevents success from becoming entitlement. Salt reminds me that every gain is supported by countless factors beyond my control, and that recognition of this truth is not weakness, but wisdom. Another powerful aspect of gratitude is resilience. Thankful people recover faster from setbacks. They may feel pain, but they do not collapse into despair. Gratitude gives perspective. It says, "This hurts, but it is not all that exists." Salt reminds me that even in hardship, some flavor remains, some lesson, some support, some strength. Gratitude does not erase suffering, but it keeps suffering from erasing meaning. The wall, it is a place where people focus on what they have and what they lack. Placing salt there is intentional. It interrupts the constant mental calculation of more, more, more. It reminds me that wealth without gratitude feels poor, and modest means with gratitude feels rich. It shifts the measure of success from accumulation to appreciation. Over time, this reminder changes behavior. A grateful person spends more wisely, speaks more kindly, listens more patiently, and lives more peacefully. Gratitude slows the rush for excess and deepens satisfaction with enough. Salt teaches me that life's flavor is not increased by piling on more ingredients, but by appreciating what is already present. In conclusion, the pinch of salt in my wallet stands as a quiet teacher of gratitude. It reminds me that blessings lose their taste when they are ignored, and that appreciation is what keeps life meaningful. Gratitude is not a feeling reserved for special moments. It is a daily practice that transforms ordinary life into a source of contentment. When you learn to recognize the salt already present in your life, you stop complaining about what is missing and begin to live with fullness, peace, and lasting joy. Money has a strange power over the human mind. It promises security, comfort, respect, and freedom, yet it also tempts, distracts, and tests character in ways few other things can. Placing a pinch of salt inside my wall, it is not accidental, it is deliberate. It sits beside money as a moral reminder, a quiet voice asking questions before decisions are made. It reminds me that earning and spending are not just financial acts, but ethical ones, and that how money is handled reveals who a person truly is. Earning money honestly is not merely about legality, it is about integrity. Many things can be technically allowed and still morally damaging. Small lies, hidden shortcuts, and quiet compromises often seem harmless, especially when pressure is high or opportunity is tempting. But just as food spoils when preservation is neglected, wealth earned without integrity decays. It brings anxiety instead of peace, fear instead of security. Salt reminds me that money should nourish life, not poison it. Honest earnings may come slowly, but they come with dignity and stability. Salt also reminds me that every coin carries intention. Money does not exist in isolation. It is connected to effort, time, and often the trust of others. When I earn, the salt asks me whether I am honoring those connections. Am I giving fair value? Am I exploiting ignorance or weakness? Am I choosing transparency over convenience? These questions matter because money that harms others eventually harms the one who holds it. Integrity preserves not only reputation, but inner peace. Spending money wisely is just as important as earning it honestly. Many people focus on how to make money, but very few reflect on how money shapes them once it is made. Impulsive spending, waste, and excess often leave emptiness rather than satisfaction. Salt teaches restraint. Just as too much salt ruins a dish, too much spending driven by desire rather than need ruins balance. The pinch in my wallet reminds me to pause, to distinguish between want and necessity, and to remember that every purchase is a vote for the kind of life I am building. There is also a lesson about responsibility. Money amplifies choices. It can support growth or fund destruction, strengthen families or damage them, build futures or sabotage them. Salt reminds me that having money does not remove responsibility. It increases it. With greater means comes greater accountability. How money is spent reflects values more clearly than words ever could. Charity, fairness, moderation, and foresight all leave fingerprints in financial behavior. Another important lesson is patience. Honest earning and wise spending often require delaying gratification. Shortcuts promise speed, but they weaken foundations. Salt reminds me that slow, steady progress is safer than rapid gain built on unstable ground. Wealth that grows with discipline lasts longer than wealth gained in haste. Just as preserved food feeds over time, preserved values sustain long-term stability. Salt also reminds me that money should serve life, not dominate it. Many people become servants of their wallets, measuring self-worth by income and success by accumulation. This creates constant pressure and never-ending dissatisfaction. Salt humbles money. It places it back in its proper role, as a tool, not an identity. The wallet becomes not a symbol of worth, but a responsibility to manage resources with wisdom and care. There is also a powerful link between money and trust. In every transaction, trust is present. Trust in systems, in people, in promises. Dishonest earning and reckless spending erode this trust. Salt reminds me to protect it. Trust, once lost, is harder to restore than wealth. Preserving trust is one of the greatest investments a person can make, and it pays dividends in relationships, reputation, and peace of mind. Another subtle lesson is gratitude. Honest earnings are easier to appreciate. Money gained through integrity carries less guilt and more satisfaction. Spending guided by values leaves fewer regrets. Salt reminds me to be thankful not just for how much I have, but for how it was obtained. Gratitude deepens contentment and reduces greed. It shifts focus from accumulation to stewardship. In moments of temptation, when cutting corners seems harmless or excess feels justified, the salt becomes a silent warning. It reminds me that money cannot compensate for lost character. Comfort purchased at the cost of integrity eventually becomes discomfort. Salt teaches that protection of values is more important than expansion of wealth. Over time, this small reminder shapes habits. It encourages budgeting, fairness, generosity, and restraint. It discourages waste, exploitation, and vanity. It creates a relationship with money that is calm rather than anxious, intentional rather than impulsive. Salt does not remove desire, but it regulates it. In conclusion, the pinch of salt in my wallet stands as a constant guide for honest earning and wise spending. It reminds me that money is powerful, but values are more powerful. Wealth gained without integrity spoils, but wealth guided by character sustains. When money is handled with honesty, restraint, and responsibility, it becomes a source of stability rather than stress. And when values sit beside wealth, like salt beside money, life remains balanced, meaningful, and deeply satisfying. Life constantly pushes people toward extremes. Some chase wealth without limits, believing more will finally bring peace. Others reject ambition altogether, confusing contentment with stagnation. The lesson behind keeping a pinch of salt in my wallet speaks directly to this tension. Salt teaches balance. Too little makes food tasteless. Too much ruins it completely. In the same way, balance between wealth and contentment is what creates a life that is both stable and meaningful. Desire itself is not the problem. Ambition has built civilizations, advanced knowledge, and lifted people out of poverty. The problem begins when desire loses its boundaries. When enough disappears from the vocabulary of the heart, satisfaction becomes impossible. No amount of money, success, or recognition can fill a space that keeps expanding. Salt reminds me that limits are not restrictions meant to punish us. They are guidelines meant to protect us. Just as salt must be measured, desire must be managed. Contentment does not mean lack of effort. It means clarity. It means knowing what truly matters and what is simply noise. A content person still works hard, still improves, still dreams, but does not become enslaved by comparison. Salt reminds me that chasing excess often costs peace. Many people earn more money only to lose sleep, health, relationships, and inner calm. Balance asks a different question: is what I am gaining worth what I am losing? Salt also teaches proportion. A small pinch can transform an entire dish. Likewise, a modest level of wealth, when combined with gratitude and purpose, can support a deeply fulfilling life. Beyond a certain point, more money does not add more happiness. It only adds complexity. More responsibility, more fear of loss, more pressure. Salt reminds me that growth should be intentional, not endless. There is also wisdom in restraint. Modern culture constantly encourages upgrading. Bigger houses, newer devices, higher status. This creates a cycle where satisfaction is always postponed. Salt interrupts that cycle. It reminds me that enjoyment is not found in excess, but in sufficiency. When you know what is enough, you stop being controlled by what you don't have. Contentment becomes an anchor that keeps ambition from drifting into obsession. Another important lesson is freedom. Ironically, endless pursuit of wealth often reduces freedom rather than increasing it. People become trapped by lifestyles they must maintain, debts they must service, images they must uphold. Salt teaches simplicity. A balanced life costs less to sustain, both financially and emotionally. Contentment reduces dependence on constant income growth and creates space for rest, relationships, and reflection. Salt also highlights the danger of imbalance on the other side. Too little ambition can lead to stagnation, dependency, and wasted potential. Just as food without salt lacks flavor, life without effort lacks vitality. Balance is not about rejecting growth. It is about directing it wisely. Salt teaches me to aim for improvement without losing myself in the pursuit. Keeping salt in my wall, it reminds me that money should support life's purpose, not replace it. When wealth becomes the goal instead of the tool, priorities invert. Relationships turn transactional. Time turns into currency. Joy turns conditional. Balance restores order. Money returns to its proper place, as a servant, not a master. There is also a deep emotional component to this lesson. Contentment creates stability in the mind. It reduces anxiety about the future and regret about the past. A balanced person can enjoy success without arrogance and endure loss without despair. Salt does not eliminate hunger, but it makes nourishment satisfying. Contentment does not eliminate desire, but it makes life feel whole. Balance also protects generosity. When people live in constant fear of not having enough, they hoard. When they feel secure in sufficiency, they share. Salt reminds me that generosity flows more easily from contentment than from abundance. A balanced heart gives freely, not because it has excess, but because it trusts that enough will remain. Another subtle lesson is dignity. Contentment preserves self-respect. It prevents desperation, compromise, and dependency. A person who knows what is enough will not sacrifice values for excess. Salt reminds me that dignity is easier to maintain when desire is disciplined. Over time, this reminder reshapes priorities. Time becomes more valuable than money. Peace becomes more valuable than status. Meaning becomes more valuable than accumulation. Balance brings clarity, and clarity brings calm. In conclusion, the pinch of salt in my wallet teaches me that a good life is not built on extremes, but on balance. Wealth without contentment is emptiness, and contentment without effort is stagnation. Salt shows the middle path where ambition is guided, desire is measured, and satisfaction is possible. When you learn to live with enough, you stop chasing endlessly and start living fully. In a world that constantly measures worth by possessions, numbers, and visible success, it is easy to forget that the deepest form of richness cannot be held, counted, or displayed. The pinch of salt in my wallet stands as a quiet contradiction to the belief that money defines value. It reminds me that true richness comes from values, those inner qualities that shape how a person lives, chooses, and treats others. Money may fill a wallet, but values fill a life. Material wealth is fragile. It can be gained quickly and lost just as fast. Markets change, circumstances shift, and what feels secure today may disappear tomorrow. Values, however, are durable. Integrity, compassion, discipline, patience, and faith are not affected by inflation, theft, or economic downturns. Salt, which does not spoil and remains unchanged over time, symbolizes this permanence. It reminds me that investing in character creates a form of wealth that cannot be taken away. Values also determine how external success is experienced. Two people can possess the same amount of money, yet live completely different emotional lives. One may live in constant fear of loss, comparison, and dissatisfaction, while the other feels grounded, peaceful, and fulfilled. The difference is not in what they have, but in who they are. Salt reminds me that without values, wealth magnifies anxiety. With values, even modest means can feel abundant. Another important truth is that values give direction to wealth. Money without guidance is like energy without purpose. It can create or destroy depending on how it is used. Values act as a compass. They determine whether resources are used to build, support, heal, or exploit. Salt reminds me that values sit at the center of every meaningful decision, shaping outcomes long before money is involved. There is also a lesson in respect. People may admire wealth, but they trust values. Respect built on money alone is shallow and temporary. Respect built on character endures. Salt teaches me that reputation rooted in values is far more powerful than status rooted in possessions. When circumstances change, values remain visible, while wealth may vanish. True richness is also revealed in relationships. Money can attract people, but values keep them. Loyalty, honesty, kindness, and empathy form bonds that money cannot buy. Salt reminds me that relationships are preserved not by gifts, but by character. A person rich in values becomes a source of stability and comfort to others, regardless of financial standing. Another dimension of inner richness is peace of mind. Wealth without values often comes with restlessness and fear. There is always more to protect, more to prove, more to lose. Values simplify life. They create clarity. When you know what you stand for, decisions become easier, regrets become fewer, and sleep becomes deeper. Salt reminds me that peace is one of the greatest forms of wealth, and it is earned through integrity, not income. Values also shape legacy. Money can be spent in a lifetime, but values can influence generations. Children remember character more than possessions. Communities remember actions more than assets. Salt, passed down and used across generations, symbolizes continuity. It reminds me that the richest inheritance I can leave behind is not financial but moral. There is also freedom in valuing values over wealth. When money defines worth, fear controls behavior. People compromise, pretend, and exhaust themselves trying to maintain appearances. When values define worth, freedom emerges. You can say no, you can walk away, you can choose peace over profit. SALT reminds me that inner wealth creates independence from constant approval and comparison. Another powerful lesson is resilience. When identity is tied to money, loss becomes devastating. When identity is rooted in values, loss becomes survivable. A person rich in values can rebuild, adapt, and continue with dignity. SALT reminds me that values act as an inner reserve, something to draw from when external resources are depleted. Over time, this perspective transforms priorities. Success becomes less about accumulation and more about alignment. Achievement becomes meaningful when it reflects inner principles. SALT reminds me that external success without inner alignment feels hollow, but alignment itself feels successful even without applause. In conclusion, the pinch of salt in my wallet is a daily reminder that true richness is invisible but powerful. Money may support life, but values give it meaning. Wealth may open doors, but character determines what happens once inside. When values lead and money follows, life feels grounded, purposeful, and whole. And when you become rich in values, you realize that no matter what sits in your wallet, you already possess the most valuable treasure of all.